Enough to them. All right. Lady in St. Louis says that at the Lambert Airport there, she was sexually assaulted. Business traveler Penny Maroney was flying home to from St. Louis to Chicago. She was asked if she could go through the body scanner, or she asked to go through a body scanner, and they said there weren't any available, so she had to be patted down. She says the TSA employee, with her gloved hands, touched my breasts, went between them, then she went into the top of my slacks, inserted her hands between my underwear and my skin. Taylor is assaulting me with the camera right now. Then put his hands up on the outside of my up inside my slacks, patted my genitals. I was shaking and crying when I left the room. Under any other circumstance, if a person touched me that way without my permission, it would be considered criminal sexual assault. You guys are shaking your head. Ooh. Are you saying, in essence, hey, if you fly, you've given your tacit permission?
No,
absolutely
not. Why does this story not sound
assaulted?
right? Why does the story not sound right to you then?
Why doesn't it sound right?
Well, you were shaking your head.
It's criminal. My perspective on this is, if we're going to be hypervigilant about the safety of the people that are traveling, we need to be hypervigilant about making sure that the people that we're screening are also appropriately screened. That her story. Do
you believe her?
I don't know. I don't know the legitimacy of the story. I don't know, and we talked about it possibly people being advantageous and wanting to create trouble for the airports or for TSA where maybe none exist. I don't know, but if this story does turn out to be true, then we need to be hypervigilant on how these people are being screened and appropriately treated, because that's unacceptable. That's not just unacceptable, that's criminal. That's awful, actually.
Did any of you see the story of that the TV reporter did? He was traveling with his family, and his 3-year-old was getting the pat down, and she became hysterical. And
I saw that.
I mean, look, if these are the exceptions to the rule, the ACLU says they are being flooded with reports. So how many exceptions to the rule are there before you don't think it's the exception to the rule anymore, Trish?
Well, it's kind of like what I talked about, Jack. Anytime you're invading somebody's personal space and you're touching them, which is why the body scanners and the wands came into play, because you're not actually physically touching that person. You know, I think that, in the essence of heightened security and national security, I mean, we have to be hypervigilant. We've got to do everything possible to protect, people who are boarding airplanes and air travel, especially during the busiest time of the year. I just think there are going to be so many more instances that come up, and whether they're legitimate or whether they're not legitimate, you are touching people, and anytime you're doing that, somebody is they may misinterpret it, or, to your point, a lot of these folks who were hired, who knows what their criminal backgrounds are? I mean, I'm sure there were background checks done, but who knows in the course of hiring these people? And so,
and creepy doesn't always show up in a background check.
And so there may be a nugget of truth associated with some of this stuff, because there are some creepy TSA folks out there.
Look, the terrorism experts around the world are shaking their head at the United States right now. They are saying, you guys are not doing this right.
Right.
You're supposed to be looking for the terrorist, not the bomb.
Right.
And the little old lady flying to San Diego to see the grandkids is not the terrorist.
It's not a threat.
And the 3-year-old is not the terrorist. And if you believe the 3-year-old is carrying explosives, Nikki, then her parents are the terrorists. Right. You don't just pat her down, you take the whole family aside. But why can't we, or are we not able as a society to go at this the way the Israelis do? They're not patting people down. They're not using these full body scan machines. Right. And by the way, they're probably the most threatened on a regular basis people in the world. They're looking at us saying, you look for the terrorist, you don't look for the device. Why can't we do that?
I think that our practices and our training have been a little lapse in that regard. And I think that, we need to have better consultants to develop the training program, so that these people are better educated. We look at not just what the Israelis are doing, but everywhere and come together.
Isn't it, though, because they profile?
Yeah, but
and we can't, in this country, we can't profile.
It's a cultural thing.
Everyone in America is hypersensitive. Everyone's under the gun. Every mistake that government makes is going to be magnified by talk show hosts like yourself, television personalities. So
it's really all my fault.
It's all
not your
Jack.
fault, but it's a hypersensitive culture. And so if we have an issue with terrorism or weapons being brought onto planes at the airport, they're just going to, the practices are going to be spread across the board. They're not just going to say, well, it's
That may be why it's happening, but that's not a good reason for it to be happening.
Well,
But Jack, I also think that this is in the United States of America, I think there's a CYA culture.
well, okay, yeah, it's true.
So,
Definitely.
So to continue to give TSA relevance, and why they're there and why they were formed in the first place, I mean, I think there are different actions that have to be taken to justify the expense associated with it. When I talk about the CYA culture, I just mean if there is a terrorist and we're not doing the kind of the Israeli approach to it, and somebody does board an airplane and explode, a plane, whether it's a bomb in your shoe or your child's carrying it or what have you, I don't know. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous at this point. But somebody, there's accountability, and nobody wants the finger pointed at them saying we should have been doing more. These pat downs, we should have been doing something like that. So rather than really investigate and get to the root of the problem, as far as how we are going to recognize and what is a terrorist and what is not a terrorist, I just think there's this blanket, massive approach.
And it's an emotional,
from a CYA standpoint.
It's an emotional response.
Yes.
So what you're seeing is an agency fighting to justify its existence.
I agree.
But perhaps maybe not responding to any specific known threat or increase in the threat level. Remember, right after 9/11, the early part of the debate was fighting terrorism abroad.
Right.
So we won't have to fight it
inside
at home.
Right.
I don't hear that anymore.
No.
I see the American flying public being treated as if it is the hypothetical enemy. Everybody who gets on a plane is potentially the
Every single person
who's going to bring the plane down. And then we are told that's how it has to be. So, really, Mario, I'm not trying to make things harder for anybody. I'm representing the vigilance and the cynicism that people have, which we're reflecting in this discussion.
Yep.
We're not sure this really is the only way it can be done, or that this is necessary.
And I think there's also something we said. A lot of these procedures are relatively new. And it will take time to work out a lot of these issues.
There may not be a way to work out the issues with patting a woman's breast.
Well,
that we have something
right.
called the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search
The
and
assumption
seizure.
when these procedures were installed were probably not that people were going to be groped. But now that we're finding out that this is an issue, I'm sure there's probably going to be discussions being set in motion to how do we rectify this problem? How do we ensure that the people that are going to be boarding our planes aren't molested before they get on?
This week, the head of the TSA, the Secretary of Homeland Security, they both dug in their heels, and they said, we're not making any changes. We'll listen, but this is how it's going to be. Well, I don't hear this is still, we're still working it out, it's the beta version.
We don't necessarily have our best practices down.
Jan Napolitano said, if you don't like it, you can find another way to travel.
I wish we had medical people involved in the process. I think part of the challenge is the TSA people, they're security people, and they're looking for, specific things. They don't have the ability to understand how to touch the body. And I think if we had, clearly, I think if maybe we had a little bit more, maybe a medical consultant helping them and say, it's not going to be placed here. There's no way this device can be inserted here. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit ridiculous. Or why can't we just be like the Jetsons and have everything electronic and taken care of?
Let me ask you this. They probably don't want the job, but what if it was the airline's responsibility to provide this security? I mean, for one thing, they would not want to be responsible for these kinds of stories like this lady in St. Louis. They also would not want one of their planes with their logo all over the wreckage blown out of the sky. They have skin in the game, which the government doesn't. Nothing happens to the TSA. If a plane blows up, it's not like anybody's going to get fired or the TSA will be defunded. Why not give the airlines, after all, we trust them to fly the plane,
the airlines would
responsibility.
The airlines would fight it tooth and nail.
They can't fight it if you tell them it's up to you.
They don't want that liability.
It would be an incredible ordeal to get the airlines to buy into this. One, because of cost. Two, because of liability. The airlines are not going to buy into this.
They might have to at some point, Mario. If this intrusiveness continues, it's going to cut into their business, and they've got to decide at some point if they want the government's
what airline is going to want to assume the liability
for
this type of?
What are we talking about?
Well, but I think it's an interesting idea, Jack, because Usually what happens is the private sector, when they approach something, they approach it a little differently and a little more
A
methodically.
little more customer-oriented,
Exactly,
too.
a little more customer service oriented versus the government. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. So I think it's a very interesting idea, whether or not the airlines decide, can we do this? Do we want to be able to take it on? But to your point, if we decide, or the government decides, they ought to do it, they really don't have any choice in the matter. But I think we probably would see better processes in place because it's private.
Well, and for one thing, I'm not suggesting that your flight attendant would now be the one doing this.
Yeah.
Obviously, they would have to hire experts, and they would have to consult with experts. They might bring in some people from the government. They might bring in people from other governments.
Okay, but logistically, how would you do it? Everyone has to go through the same security. So then, are you saying that you have to go through different airline security?
Well, when you're in the ticket counter area for Southwest, that could be where Southwest's security screening is.
Right.
Or you could have an airport say, we've got since Delta's the major airline at our airport, Delta has the contract at this airport to do all of the security screening. But my point is, these are the people who need us to get on the planes. These are the people who cannot afford anything to happen on those planes. You can't tell me that they don't have better motivation and a little more sensitivity to how it's done than a government bureaucracy with a unionized workforce.
Even if we push the airlines and we force them to be responsible for the safety of their passengers, who creates the procedures? Who maintains quality control? You have a dozen different airlines.
The planes, Mario. I mean,
but
who maintains quality control in the flying of the plane?
Who is going to dictate to these dozen or so major airlines that these are the procedures that you need to follow in order to ensure safety?
No one.
We can't. Well, what if one airline says, well, we're doing a simple pat down, while another airline says we're going to be doing a body scan, pat down, and bag check?
You as the customer can
decide. You get to decide which airline.
Well, I would hope that would happen. I would hope that we'd have different approaches and that customers could choose which one they think is right.
That would be interesting to see. And then what airline would succeed? Are customers more interested in vigilant safety, or are they more interested in efficiency and just getting through?
I'll bet there are some of both.
It's the same way how you purchase tickets and how you make reservations. Each one's a little bit different.
I mean, why do some people smoke and some people don't? Why do some people drink and some people don't? I mean, we're all capable. I know this is hard to believe in the year 2010, but we're all capable of making our own decisions and setting our own risk level. Now, I will say this: there is a tremendous risk to people on the ground from terrorists getting a hold of an airplane. Let's not forget, it's not just the people, up in the sky. But again, I keep coming back to the fact that after 9/11, no one said, that damn American Airlines, I will never fly them again. Because no one for a minute thought that American Airlines had anything to do.
Exactly.
But 50% of the planes were American Airlines.
Right.
So I think it makes more sense in a free market for these companies, which after all, they're flying the planes, they're taking a tremendous amount of liability, to have this responsibility and to learn to incorporate it and maybe incorporate it into the price of the ticket. I guarantee you it'll be cheaper.
I guarantee American, United, everyone's going to love that. Yeah.
It'll be cheaper than what we're paying for as taxpayers, though we're paying for thousands standing around, as they call the TSA.
Right.
And I don't, I think we have to question whether they are making us safer. You said at the beginning that you feel as if they have, but I don't know. If they've never really caught anything, if people in other countries that have dealt with terrorism say it's a joke, and if now their strategy is to sort of cover their butt and justify their existence, if you're really doing security, you don't have to CYA.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I've done quite a bit of traveling since 9/11, and seeing the attitude that the airports have taken towards protecting the passengers has made me feel more comfortable as I pass through the gates. It really has.
But security theater is something that can make you feel more comfortable. It doesn't mean you are more secure.
That may be
Do you
true,
want to feel more secure, or do you want to be more secure?
Well,
I want to be more secure.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I think the thousand standing around the TSA approach is to create a perception
I think so
that
too.
security is better, whether or not they're really isolating or finding terrorists that come on board, but the perception, and I think the administration wants to create the perception.
The Bush administration, Nikki, after 9/11, could not have come out to the American people and said, even though they got these box cutters on board, we think everything is pretty good the way it is. We're going to leave.
Right.
I mean, they had to create a big song and dance routine, and now every succeeding administration is going to invest in new technology and more equipment to show how serious they are. This will bleed us dry. It won't make us safer.